Hey folks, today we're going to be learning a little bit about speed, and I thought I would start this off by just asking you guys, how would you define speed? I'm going to guess that most of you ended up saying speed is how fast something moves or how fast something travels, and you'd be exactly right. Another way of saying this is it's simply the distance that object moves divided by the time it takes it to move. That's how we describe how fast something moves. In other words, speed equals distance divided by time, or S equals D over T. Cool. So whenever we're measuring speed, it's important to think about how we measure our distance and our time, because distance and time can have different units, and so can our speed. So how can we measure distance? What are some units that we can use to measure distance? And when you use a ruler, what are the units associated with that ruler? Some of you might have said centimeters. We can use centimeters to measure distance. Definitely. Absolutely. If you're using a meter stick, right, you might be able to measure things in meters. You might have heard of this one. It's called a kilometer. A kilometer is just 1,000 meters. So there are different units we can use to measure our distance. And we can abbreviate these units because scientists can be a little bit lazy sometimes. We don't like having to write out everything. We can also measure distance in things like feet, in miles, and yards, but we're not going to use those as much in science class because those aren't the types of measurements that scientists make. So we're going to use distance when we're measuring our speed. And I believe you guys already saw this little bit. How can we measure time? What are some units that we can use to measure time? Because the units we use to measure time are really important because that's going to influence our speed since time is a part of speed. Okay, but start off with, how can we measure time? Seconds, right? We can measure it in seconds, definitely. We can measure time in minutes or in hours or days. These are all great units of measurement to measure time. Over the next couple of days, we will primarily be using seconds. However, you might occasionally see some of these other terms abbreviated as such. Here, we're going to move this down just a little bit. There we go. So like hours might be abbreviated as hours, and days you might occasionally see abbreviated as DYS for days. There we go. But for most of these problems, I'm going to be using the same units just to keep things simple with you guys. So we'll primarily be using meters, and we'll primarily be using seconds, just to keep things easy. Okay, so let's do a couple of practice problems. Let's get some practice using this handy-dandy speed equals distance divided by time equation, or S equals D divided by T. That's how I'll be writing it for the most part, distance divided by time. Okay. All right. So in this particular practice problem, we've got a car, and it travels 1,000 meters in 30 seconds, and I want to know what that car's speed is. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to identify what I know in this problem and what I don't know in this problem. There are two things that I know. What are they? Can you identify them? So the first thing that I know is my distance. And I've got this handy dandy little meters hint. Remember, meters are a unit of measurement of distance. And so if I ever see that M, that clues me in that I'm measuring a distance. Okay, so I've identified my distance is 1,000 meters. Great. I can also identify my time. Remember, seconds is a unit of time. And I can abbreviate seconds as S. So whenever I see the word seconds or the symbol S for seconds, that should clue you in that we're measuring the time of something. Okay. Now, sometimes you'll try okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. Sometimes you're going to have to try and solve for the speed. Sometimes you might try and solve for the distance or the time. But for right now, we're trying to solve for the speed. This question is asking us, what is our car's speed? And right now, we really don't know what it is. So that's okay. We're going to figure it out. We're going to learn what our speed is. Our formula for the next couple of days is always going to be the same. It's always going to be speed equals distance divided by time. Okay. All right, so next up, we need to substitute what we know into this formula. So I know the distance is 1,000 meters, and I also know that the time is 30 seconds. So I can substitute 30 seconds in for t, and I can substitute 1,000 meters in for d. Let me show you how that works. So S equals d divided by t. Here, let me write it like this. S equals d, or 1,000 meters, divided by t, or 30 seconds, because 30 seconds is my time. Then I can whip out a handy-dandy calculator. You're welcome to use a phone, you're welcome to use a laptop calculator, you're welcome to use an actual calculator. Whatever calculator tool works best for you. Heck, if you want to do it on paper, that's fine. But when I punch these numbers into my calculator, I got 33.3 repeating meters per second. And those units are really important. There we go. Those units are really important. That's an extremely important step in our process. And you'll notice when I did my substitute step, I included my units in my substitute. I didn't just substitute 1,000, I substituted 1,000 meters. So that way I knew in my answer that it would be meters divided by seconds, or meters per second. So this can be a little bit tricky, and that's okay. We're going to get practice with it. But that's what I want you guys to do right now. I want you guys to get a little bit of practice with this process and try one of these problems out on your own. And it's okay if you make mistakes. We're learning, right? We wouldn't be here if we were only going to do things that you knew how to do. We're going to occasionally test you guys on things that you don't know how to do. So if you make some mistakes, that's okay. Usain Bolt is the fastest man alive, and he ran the 100-meter sprint in 9.61 seconds. What was his speed? Go ahead and try and solve this process. If you get stuck, feel free to go back to the previous problem. The process that we use for this problem is exactly the same as the process we used for the last one. So you can use that as a guide to help you through with this one. If you get stuck on one of the steps or don't know what this means or how it works, check the previous problem. Go ahead, once you know your answer, type it in. Don't forget your units. Good luck. Okay, let's see if you're right, and let's see if you made any mistakes, where you made them. We know our speed. My fault. We know our time is 9.61 seconds, and we know our distance is 100 meters. And we know that because seconds, that's a unit of time, and meters, that's a unit of distance. Okay, so here we go. Distance equals 100 meters. Time equals 9.61 seconds. Great. And we don't know our speed, just like in the previous problem. Okay, our formula is just speed equals distance divided by time. That's what it's going to be for the entire week. It's not going to change. It's always going to be speed equals distance divided by time, because that's what speed is. Okay, so we're going to substitute what we know into the equation. 100 meters divided by 9.61 seconds. And when we do that, when we punch those numbers into our calculator and do our math step, here we go. 100 divided by 9.61, I get 10.4. And there's a lot of decimal points after that, but we're going to simplify it to 10.4. That's fine. If you had more decimals, that's okay. Meters per second, right? Just like in the previous problem, we're taking meters divided by seconds. So if you made a mistake with the units, check and see if you did that substitute step correctly. Check and see that you included your units when you substituted your numbers over, because that's very important. Cool. Tomorrow I'll be assigning you guys just a couple of practice problems for you to try and go formative. Good luck. I'll talk to you later. Bye.